with video number 2 of the pre-Columbian and colonial notes, unit 1. So what I'd like you to do is get your pen ready and then make sure you're following along with me. And when I say pause, you need to pause. And guess what? Here's your first slide. So pause and get it down. We'll talk about it in a second. Remember, you can't write and listen at the same time, so you better have paused. I can see you if you didn't pause. Okay, hopefully you paused. All right, European settling in. We have 3 groups we're going to look at. You wrote down 3 groups. Top, French. Middle, Spanish. English is at the bottom of this slide. But let's really talk about where they were in comparison. The French are going to give claim and settle in Canada. Please circle Canada. They are going to build a fur trading post in Quebec, Canada in 1608. I'd like you to circle fur trading post. That's how they make their money. Always very important to know how people make their money. Okay? Then I need you to go ahead and circle 1608. This settlement continued to the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River. I always find interesting that it's 1608 because 1608 isn't the year we often hear about in American history. It's 1607. Well, that's Jamestown, but it's interesting to note that while Jamestown is being settled in 1608 is the French in Canada. They did desire to convert the natives, so it is a little bit religiously motivated, but in all reality, French, they want land, fur trading, etc., Canada. Now, the middle one, Spanish. Okay, they are going to be the ones we ultimately first study. In fact, we've already been talking about them. Okay, Christopher Columbus by the Spanish Queen. They defeat the Aztecs and the Incas in the early 1500s or the 16th century. Okay, always remember if it says 16th century, go back a number. Okay, they explore Mexico, Florida, and much of the Southwest. Mexico in particular is the one that we talk about, of course, when we talk about Mesoamerica. However, the first settlement in North America is going to be in none other than just a little ways away, Santa Fe, New Mexico. But I find it interesting that right here it doesn't say settlement right here. It says, I want you to underline this. It says what word? What does it say? Tell me. Mission. Which means, oh, is there another little bit of religion kind of seeping into it? Absolutely. So I'd put another little cross here if you want to, just like the French, okay? And literally that year is going to be 1610. So up here you had 1608. You have 1610 right here. You know Jamestown is 1607. Is this happening at exactly the same time? Kind of interesting to see. Very bottom one. Now this has a little bit of information you may not have known. Just good information. That actually the first permanent colony is not Jamestown. It was a place called Roanoke Island. Let me give you a picture here real quick. Okay, right here, Roanoke Island, a little bit south of Jamestown, actually right off of North Carolina. Jamestown will be in Virginia, okay? Jamestown's the one that lasts, that's why we study it. But in all actuality, Roanoke, you might circle it right here, settled in 1585. But let's be real honest, you probably haven't heard of it before, because guess what? They died. End of story. What we study, and here's what you're supposed to write down in here at the bottom, is Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. And of course, you know Jamestown, really, really important. Here's a really good map. I like always looking at maps. It tells a story. It says French claims are red, British claims are blue, Spanish claims are yellow. Now, who really has the most claim? French. Who has the least claim? British. Spanish is down at the bottom, right? There's that Santa Fe mission right up there. But with that, the interesting thing is that you would think, oh, the French have the most land, they'll stick around. But they didn't. The one who had the least land stuck around, the British, right? That's where Britain settled America, right? Basically the colonies. But the one thing I can tell you is that that might be what it looks like, but this is actually foreshadowing the first war we're going to study. And it's not the American Revolution. It's the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War. Kind of interesting to see that. But Jamestown lasts 1607, and that's, of course, our first settlement. Now, pause, get it down. Mercantilism, say it. What did I say? Mercantilism. Well, a lot of the times people are like, oh my God, I don't know what that word means. It's too hard. It's too hard. Big long word. Don't like it. Don't like it. Go to the root word. Mercantilism, merchant. What is a merchant? A merchant is somebody who buys and sells. Well, guess what? It has to do with money. Mercantilism is the economic philosophy. I made that green. It's probably important. Circle it. Of Great Britain when they established the colonies, the 13 colonies. Now, what you wrote down when you paused it, because you should have paused it because you can't write and listen at the same time, is that the colonies would produce sugar, lumber, naval resources, naval stores, fish, really lumber a lot, okay? But those are all raw resources for the empire. So the empire, the mother, established the baby. Then the baby, the colonies, give her raw resources. Then the mother takes and finishes those goods, and then she'll send it back to the baby, and she'll sell it to them at a nice price. Now, that sounds okay as long as she's being fair to the baby colonies, but do we know Britain was not fair to us? And while they did somewhat protect us, okay, they really just wanted to protect us so they could have our resources. And we started to get tired of it. And I'll be very honest with you. When we start getting into like the French and Indian War and then Britain stops having the money that they've always had before, they want to make it up somehow. So what do? They want more money. So they sell us finished goods, but they're going to make more money because they can put what on those finished goods and get more money out of the colonists. Oh, you know it's coming. No taxation without representation. Now down here at the very bottom right here on this slide, I just have you a little bit of information. Maybe just annotate it. Colonists develop a great skill for evading British laws they found harmful. Let's be real honest, they just didn't like. And they showed an independent spirit. Americans, independent spirit. Who would have thought it? And they started smuggling stuff because they didn't want to pay the taxes. They didn't want to do what Britain said. Britain really was okay with it when they were making money, but all of a sudden, when money starts to get tight with the French and Indian War, Britain starts to tighten up on them. Well, guess what? The babies learned, the colonies have learned, they can do what they want, right? So when the parents start to put rules down, the babies start bucking. And that's where the American Revolution comes from. You mean to tell me we were once exploited by Britain? I know. It shocks you. It shouldn't. All right. Pause it. American colonies' motives. I'm going to leave this one short and sweet. Economic. Everybody wants what should be the sign by economic motives. Money. Surplus capital, profit, mercantilism, raw materials. Moving on. Religious motives. If I was going to put a symbol out beside this one, and I might look and see if you did. Obviously, a cross. The Protestant Reformation kind of splits up different sections of religions, and a lot of them want to get away from England. So the Catholics, the Puritans, and the Quakers come. And we know that they will settle in Maryland, Massachusetts, and if you did your summer assignment, of course, you'll remember Quakers are in Pennsylvania. But in all reality, they all come for a little bit of political freedom as well. All right, big slide right here. Pause it, get it down. Okay, southern colonies. Just think south. What pops in your mind when you think south? Just basic words, south. Did I hear you think slavery? You probably did. Did I hear you say maybe warm climate? You probably did. Did I hear you say farming, agriculture? You probably did. Okay, now here's the deal. These colonies, and you got to know them, Virginia, Maryland, Carolinas, and Georgia are going to be known as your southern colonies. Now, they are going to make their money with agriculture. Please circle it, okay? That's why slavery becomes big here. Now, smoke in Virginia, well, I say it's smoke in Virginia because you want to know what basically saved it? Tobacco. Make sure you definitely highlight or circle that, please. It was settled by a Virginia joint stock company because the motive here was profit. While they may have been somewhat religious in the South, they're looking for money. And in one person in particular is a great leader that comes out of Jamestown. Of course, you've heard of him, John Smith. He who shall not work shall not eat. Okay? He's a really good leader, but the one thing I'll tell you is that he is not your savior of Jamestown. John Smith isn't. The real savior of Jamestown is the guy who brought the tobacco, and you got to know his name. In fact, more so than Smith's. John Rolfe. Because the thing about if you tell people if you shall not work, you shall not eat, if they end up working, you better have something for them to eat. And we all know what happened during the starving time, cannibalism, etc. It was Rolfe that brought in the tobacco that made it work. Remember, smoking Virginia. All about the money and the tobacco, okay? Then Mary, Maryland. I just want you to make sure you circle Catholic. And that's pretty easy because Catholics pray to Virgin Mary, so they named it Maryland. Okay, Queen Mary, Virgin Mary, etc. Maryland Act of Toleration, oftentimes one of the most missed questions on the test. It literally is a little bit of a weird thing because, I mean, it's a little bit hypocritical. Act of Toleration, but then they made people accept the Trinity. It was really to protect the Catholics, but in all reality, they kind of forced it on other people. So tolerant, nah, maybe not so much, but that's 1649. Individualistic Carolinas, Again, you should be listening to me, making notes, not writing this. Probably more relaxed. They do what they want, I'll be real honest. Okay, Carolinas do what they want. But here's the deal. African slaves and a plantation economy. Ooh, here we start to see the South rising. And then, of course, Georgia. I'll be honest with you, this one should be easy as long as you study. Created a buffer zone between Spanish and us, okay, down in Florida, and then the 13 colonies. But also it was started to put all the problems, the criminals and the debtors. So it's something to think about. Now, next slide is going to be entirely about how do we get the agriculture to take off. We need labor. Well, you don't get slaves first. Actually, you get indentured servants. So pause this, get it down. Pause. All right, indentured servants. Now, if you did your summer assignment, you know this one. Indentured servants literally are slaves that sell themselves basically for a period of time. Now, I think you have 4 to 5 years. You might want to circle that. I've heard of anything up to 7 years. But they basically sell themselves. They sign a contract. This is a poster they may have seen, free land, etc. And they want freedom. Well, the Crown gives rich people land, and then they, the non-rich people, sell themselves for a certain time. They provide labor, and every once in a while they'll get a little bit of land at the end. Indentured servitude. It eventually leads to slavery, though, because of this one thing right here, the headright system. Pause it, get it down. Okay, you should have paused it. The headright system is basically saying whoever paid for passage for a laborer received 50 acres, and every once in a while some of the richer people would give that land as a promise to those indentured servants to get really good ones. But when the indentured servants got here, they were disenfranchised. You're asked, what does that mean? It means they had the right to vote taken away. They didn't get their land, and also there was this guy in Virginia, okay, called Governor Berkeley, who refused to protect them from Indian attacks when they had to settle on land that was not settled. So this guy Bacon pops up. Now you have to make sure you know the date on this one, 1676. Make sure you get that down. Let me show you Bacon real quick. Let me get you this, and then pause it and get it down. Okay. Bacon's Rebellion, this guy named Nathaniel Bacon, acts as a representative for the rebels, the indentured servants. You really should cross out rebels and put indentured servants. Governor Berkeley refuses to meet their condition. I'm going to be really honest with you. Bacon gets all these people riled up, but then he dies and the rebellion sucks and it doesn't go anywhere. Which you say, Mrs. Barnes, that's a huge letdown. Like you just completely screwed up the story. Well, I'm sorry, that's what happened. History sucks sometimes. But let me be real honest. The big deal is that the plantation owners now look at an indentured servant and they look risky. So what is a very easy form of labor? Something that you can just do it and it's always going to be there. You bought it and it doesn't talk back. Oh, that's right, slaves. And so you start to see the decline of the headright system and the increase of slavery. So could you say Bacon, Nathaniel Bacon, helped cause a civil war? You sure could. Northern colonies. Pause it. Get it down. Okay, so let's go with this. Northern colonies. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire. I'm going to be honest with you. When you think north, I think cold, which means not agriculture. I want you to pick a big old sign next to this one. I want you to put a cross because the northern colonies were primarily settled for religious freedom. The first one you have, of course, and I don't need to talk this up too much, Plymouth Pilgrims. This is going to be Massachusetts Bay Colony area. Okay, now one thing I want to make sure you understand is it's just north of Virginia, very much kind of, I don't want to say in the middle-ish, but it is somewhat close to Virginia, but it's north. The Mayflower landed. Of course, we have the Mayflower Compact, a government by a majority, a self-government. Puritans, eventually absorbed by Massachusetts Bay Colony, and then we get to Massachusetts. It is going to be a theocracy. I need you to go ahead and take and circle that. The church and state will be connected in Massachusetts. That's going to be something we end quickly after this. John Winthrop, it's going to be a really important guy that he is going to be the one that says we must be a city upon a hill, meaning we'll be an example. This is where the witch trials happen, and a girl named Anne Hutchinson, who's best known for her struggle with the religious doctrine, is basically told to shut up and move out, and she actually ends up getting screwed up by some Indians. You need to know her. She ends up getting into the history books because she's the first woman to speak out. Ever heard of a thing called women's rights? Free thinking Rhode Island, Roger Williams. Indians paid for the land. Oh, or they paid Indians for land? That's crazy. They separated church and state? Ooh, that's weird. Rhode Island had the right idea. And then Connecticut, Thomas Hooker, the beginning of the Constitution, they gave women's rights. That's crazy. And then, of course, New Hampshire was entirely about fishing.